Unless you've been living under a rock for the past several years, you are well aware of the financial upheaval that has befallen our world. Some have called it a second depression, but to lessen the psychological impact, the official label is the Great Recession. The misery that people suffer as a consequence of the monetary system has been amplified since 2008. I won't waste time or space listing the hardships endured by this recession. Odds are you already know them anyway. There are at least 4 major reasons to get rid of money. You can probably think of more. Before getting into those reasons, I'll point out a few things some people have had to say about money over the years. Leo Tolstoy, the author of War and Peace, said that money is a new form of slavery and distinguishable from the old simply by the fact that it is impersonal, that there is no human relation between master and slave. According to the German philosopher Karl Marx, money plays the largest role in determining the course of history. Franklin D. Roosevelt, 32nd President of the United States, said, "We know now that government by organized money is just as dangerous as government by organized mob." Malcolm Sinclair, the 20th Earl of Caithness, stated, "Our whole monetary system is dishonest, as it is debt-based. We did not vote for it. It grew upon us gradually but markedly since 1971, when the commodity-based system was abandoned." Reason 1: diminished access to power. Make no mistake, money equals power. Power is about control, and money controls our lives in a major way. We would all like to be in control of our own lives, but there are those who would like to control not only their own lives, but the lives of others as well. The more control someone has over my life, the less control I have. Recipient of the 1973 Nobel Prize and former Secretary of State Henry Kissinger said, "Who controls the food supply controls the people. Who controls the energy can control whole continents. Who controls money can control the world." The desire for power and control is as old as humankind. Through the ages, there have been kings, dictators, emperors, and other rulers, including the rule of law. Democracy is a political system that attempts to have the populace decide what will and will not be law. According to former U.S. Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis, we can have democracy in this country, or we can have great wealth concentrated in the hands of a few, but we can't have both. Reinforcing that sentiment, Mayor Amschel Rothschild, founder of the House of Rothschild, asserted, "Let me issue and control a nation's money, and I care not who writes the laws." The message in both of these statements is that when wealth enters the stage, democracy flies out the window. The will of the people is trumped by money. The circumstances in the world today attest to the truth of these men's views. Throughout history, there have been those who strive for power over other people. Centuries ago, that power was acquired mainly through physical strength. Today, power is acquired primarily through money and fear. Since we like to think of ourselves as civilized rather than barbaric, money is the more widely used of the two. Guitarist Jimi Hendrix insightfully stated that when the power of love overcomes the love of power, the world will know peace. The elimination of money would significantly lessen the ability of one person or a small group of people to acquire a disproportionate amount of power. Power is one thing, corruption is another. A person with power doesn't necessarily fall into corruption, but more often than not, the one follows the other. We've all heard the famous quote of Lord John Acton, "Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Great men are almost always bad men." A number of studies have shown his statement to be true. A person in power becomes corrupt when he uses that power to his personal advantage and to the disadvantage of others. There are countless stories of good people coming to power, then falling into corruption. The story of David and Bathsheba in 2 Samuel chapter 11 is an excellent example of power corrupting a person. David was the young lad who slew Goliath the giant. He found favor with God, and when he was older, he was chosen to be king. One evening, he happened to see a beautiful woman bathing. He desired her and asked who she was. He was told that her name was Bathsheba and that she was the wife of Uriah, a soldier in David's army. Allowing his desire to corrupt his morals and having the power of a king, he slept with her. Later, he had Uriah sent to the front line of battle, where he would certainly be killed. Uriah was indeed killed, and David took Bathsheba as his wife. Needless to say, God was not pleased with David's sins. I will interject something at this point. Though this entire website is devoted to the concept of a world without money, money itself isn't the root of the problem. I'm not naive enough to think that if we actually do get rid of money, we will have achieved some sort of utopia. There is no perfect world outside of heaven. Personally, I'm not a gun owner, but I agree with those who say guns don't kill people, people kill people. The point is that guns are inanimate objects. They have no will of their own and by themselves are harmless. It's only when they are in the hands of a person that they become dangerous. The same is true of money. It is lifeless and valueless in itself. It is only when it gets in the hands of a person that it has the potential to do harm. The trouble is that I don't think we have the ability to eradicate humanity's quest for wealth and power. So I'm suggesting what I think is the next best thing. Remove the catalyst, the primary enabler that allows greed and power to manifest themselves. In absence of money, will power-hungry people find other ways to acquire power? Of course they will. Such is the curse and struggle of humankind. Gaining and balancing power is the essence of wars and revolutions. Those who have power fight to keep it. Those who don't fight to gain it. Reason 2. Debt would end. If money is eliminated, debt is eliminated along with it. Of course, people can be indebted by things other than money, but for the most part, debt is incurred and repaid with money. In today's world, debt is probably the most effective tool that people with power use to oppress people without power. It is often referred to as debt slavery or financial bondage. Anyone who has tried in vain to get out of debt can relate to those terms. Although people are no longer property as slaves once were, and no longer chained or whipped, being shackled with crushing debt is nearly as efficient in stripping a person of his freedom. This modern version of enslavement can be emotionally and psychologically debilitating, even to the point of suicide. The end of money would be accompanied by the end of debt, thereby ending its oppression. People would be free to live unencumbered lives. Merle Travis wrote a song called 16 Tons, released in 1947. Although America was beginning its post-war boom at that time, the song became very popular because it effectively expressed the restraints put on those in debt. The singer is a coal miner lamenting his plight. The miners and their families lived and worked in the mining camp. The mining company owned the camp, the housing, and the store where the workers would buy their necessities, thereby keeping the money in the control of the company. The wages were barely enough for the workers and their families to scrape by. These conditions made it impossible for them to seek other more lucrative work. The result was that, in effect, the company owned the workers. Here are the lyrics to the refrain. You load 16 tons, what do you get? Another day older and deeper in debt. St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. I owe my soul to the company store. Reason 3, more time. Time is something we tend to take for granted. Yet, if you think about it, it is our most precious commodity. Time is something we all have in equal amounts, whether animal, vegetable, or mineral. It doesn't matter if you're short or tall, fat or skinny, rich or poor, old or young, male or female, we all have 60 minutes in an hour, 24 hours in a day, and 12 months in a year. Our lifespans vary, but within those lifespans, time is given to each of us in equal amounts at the same rate. In that sense, it is a great equalizer. Time, like money, is something we never seem to have quite enough of. How many people are employed in banking, insurance, and accounting? How about stock markets, the IRS, and the International Monetary Fund? Without money, none of these would exist. How many hours are spent every day dealing with money, all the way from the international level to couples working out a budget at their kitchen table? If money didn't exist, how would these billions, probably trillions of hours spent by all those people be used? Well, some of them could be used for leisure. Lord knows the level of stress in this world is wreaking havoc on our mental and physical well-being, tearing families apart, and driving up the crime rate. The rest of those hours could be used to help other people. There's no shortage of need in the world. Until every human being on the planet is fed, clothed, housed, educated, and has access to health care, our work is not finished. Instead of spending time figuring out how to pay the credit card bills, we could be doing some good out in the world. Try this eye-opening exercise. For 1 month, keep track of the amount of time you spend managing your money, paying bills, budgeting, deciding whether or not you can afford something, taxes, trips to the bank, etc. At the end of that month, think about how you could use that time in other ways. Reason 4, everything else has been tried. Why do we need to get rid of money altogether? Why don't we keep the monetary system and just fix what's wrong with it? Almost every problem society faces, crushing debt, hunger, homelessness, poor education, most crime, massive unemployment, crumbling infrastructure, even war, can be traced to money. Economists, financial gurus, and politicians write endless books and articles about how to make the world better by manipulating money. Redistribution of wealth, tax reform, cuts to Social Security and Medicare, less government spending, stimulus packages, trickle-down economics, and the list keeps going. They have turned the financial woes of the world inside out and examined them from every possible angle. Yet here we are in the middle of the most devastating financial downturn since the Great Depression. Albert Einstein is credited with having defined insanity as doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. That seems to be exactly what these folks do. These are intelligent, well-educated, and in many cases, well-meaning people. I find it hard to believe that no one ever mentions eliminating the monetary system and trying something else. The idea is bound to have entered some of these minds. I can only guess that it's never brought up because to do so would likely jeopardize a reputation. Or perhaps it's because leaving the monetary system is such a gargantuan undertaking that no one wants to put it on the table. But I, not being of that ilk, have no reputation to trash, and after all these years of running it through my head, have no hesitation in getting started with it. It's been the better part of a century since the stock market crash of 1929 that ignited the Great Depression. After that grueling period, laws were enacted to ensure that such a thing would never happen again. Yet, just a few years ago, we were on the brink of a replay. For most of the world, the Great Recession is still going strong, and in my opinion, there's no end in sight. In addition, there were several economic downturns between these two catastrophes. With all these brilliant minds and the vast study of economics, why can't we develop a world that works for everyone? Perhaps that's not the real intent. Consider this. If I'm a smoker who has recurring bouts of bronchitis, wouldn't it be pretty obvious that I should quit smoking? It may not completely solve my problem, but it certainly would put me on the road to recovery. If you have a problem, you figure out what's causing the problem and you get rid of it. It's not rocket science. If putting fruit punch in your soup makes the soup taste bad, quit putting fruit punch in the soup. Problem solved. I don't mean to make all this sound simplistic. I've already acknowledged that this is a monumental endeavor. But figuring out what to do is simple. Figuring out how to do it, not so much. We'll begin to tackle that process in future rants. In these first rants, I have attempted to bring your attention to some things you already know but probably don't give much thought to. To summarize, the principal points are: money is not a requirement in life. Fiat money has no value and is useless to human beings. People, not money, get things done. For most of us, money is more of a hindrance than a help. The only difference in barter and purchase is the medium of exchange. A different system of distributing goods and services to people is possible. Money is the primary catalyst of power, and power usually leads to corruption. Eliminating money means eliminating debt. The monetary system thwarts full realization of human potential. Time spent dealing with money could be used in a much more worthwhile manner.